And Irv, you look better than you have in a long time. All righty. Let's see here. It is noon. We have the majority of the people we need. I don't think we're going to be pressed on time, but that's what I thought about board meeting. So might as well get started, right? It is March 9th. Here comes Danny Sherlock. Welcome to Danny as he comes in. It is March 9th. Hard to believe it's already that late in the year. We're going to be changing time soon, huh? Is everyone excited as I am to be getting up an hour earlier? All right, we'll ring the bell to start the meeting. Let's see. Jackie, Justin, and we ring the bell. Joe, welcome. Just to put you on the spot as soon as you get here, let me mute everybody and then you can unmute yourself. Let's see, there we go. Go ahead, Joe.
All right. Thank you. Well, today I'd like to have a short prayer. I had a funeral on Sunday. I had a funeral this morning in Calexico. I have a funeral in a little bit over an hour in National City. And for some reason, this has just been an absolutely heartbreaking time. And us as a family in Rotary are suffering the loss of Rosa. So I just like to pray for all of us and for her that are hurting at this time. So please bow your heads if you are so inclined. Father God, there are times when we go through these seasons of brokenheartedness and we go through seasons of joy. We go through different seasons in our life, but without doubt, today we are going through a season of heartbreak. So many things happening, so many of our loved ones passing away. And at this moment, I just want to remember Rosa and those that, and her loved ones, Lord, as we have lost someone that we looked up to, someone that we enjoyed being around, that was fun, and that would just brought a smile and a blessing to so many of us. Mend the heart of those that are hurting. We thank you and we ask this always, knowing that you can bring us peace and strength. In Jesus' name, amen.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, and so appropriate. It is definitely one of those years. All right. Okay, forward. Marilyn. Marilyn, you're muted still.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Please join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
nation under God,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Today's patriotic song, we'll do the Star Spangled Banner.
was that, Andrew?
That was Fort McHenry,
Thank you.
where the Star Spangled Banner was originally written.
Wow.
Beautiful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So welcome. It is our Escondido Rotary Club Zoom meeting for this 9th of March. Our speaker today is a guest, Mr. Mike. Oh God, I just lost. I'm sorry. I apologize. Mike Strong is our speaker today. Do we have any other guests that I'm missing? Any visiting Rotarians? All right, hearing none. Mike, this is for you and you alone. Aussie isn't here today to actually sing for himself. He's stuck in a place that doesn't have any Zoom capability, so he's going to sing this for you this way.
Howdy, we're glad to have you here. Welcome, we sing a loud and clear. Relax, enjoy the program, and won't you come back to see us again?
Whoop, whoop. Beautiful. Okay. So our upcoming calendar. Next week, we have Dr. Sabiha Pasha on functional medicine specialty. 17th is Haven House. The 20th is the Veterans Stand Down Clothing Drive. Going to talk about that a little bit, just a tiny little bit coming up. 23rd, Robin Douglas is coming back to us to talk about art again. On the 30th, we're going to have Steve Weitzen, our district governor. On the 6th, Blake Steinecke will be speaking to us. On the 7th, another Haven House, and then on the 10th, District Training Assembly. The District Training Assembly is a virtual assembly, and we really would love to have as many people sign up as possible. Since you don't actually have to drive down to USD, got no excuse, right? Great way to understand who all the different players are in our county Rotary, get to know them, maybe make some new friends and get some new ideas. The 13th, Second Serve, an innovative youth-led charity. On the 20th, the first of 2 meetings of recognizing our community grant recipients. And then on the 21st, Haven House again. Member moments, we actually have 2 member moments this week. The first, I'm sure most of you have heard, but we just really once again want to send our love to Rose's friends and family and all the people that she has touched. Definitely a force in our community and a big loss to our club and a big loss to many of us personally. On the positive, the yang to the yin, if you will, 2 of our members changed their status about a week ago. Yeah, there you go. Smile, Justin. Smile, Alex. Can you believe that Justin actually got someone to marry him? This is amazing. Yeah, well, okay, Justin can believe it. I can believe it too. He's a nice guy. Great pictures. Beautiful ceremony, it looks like. And now I understand why you're having so many problems at Men's Warehouse with getting the right size for a tux. All right, Christine, shall we talk about Rotarians in the wild?
Sure. For our guests, this is the part of our program where we search social media and find out what our Rotarians have been doing out and about during the week. So this was the Sullivans, Michelle and her husband, and Jackie Skay and Jay, that were out at Anzo Borrego. And I ran across this guy that has really some trouble with the Jeep. They tried to help, but wasn't able to move it off the rocks.
It looks like when they're on that cliff there, are they looking for Paulette and her camera or something there?
Well, I'm wondering who took the picture. Remember, was it Michelle that was left, 100, a mile and a half away from where they are? I don't know who took that picture.
That wasn't us. That was another group up there.
Oh,
Oh,
I see. So it may have been Paulette.
We were up there shortly thereafter.
mhm. Okay, next. All right, Rachel, once again, our culinary expert, went to the Flying Toad. So they loved it, and it's getting the best reviews. So it used to be Hunsaker Vincent's. So if you haven't tried it, it's pretty spectacular. So there is Rachel, her husband, and the two girls.
And they were a sponsor, of course, so there's another good reason to go visit them besides the amazing food and the
Yes.
recommendations.
Yeah. Bill Smith giving blood. He says here he's asked them to replace it with Mandalorian blood. I guess if you don't have Disney Plus, you're out of the joke. I'm not sure what that means, but thank you for donating blood, Bill, and sending this
He
in.
wants to be a bounty hunter.
Okay, this is Alicia and Tommy Reeves, 10 years. And so, yeah, congratulations and happy anniversary to the two of you.
All right. Thank you so much, Christine. Very, very, very helpful work on that. So coming up in 2 weekends, we have the Veterans Stand Down Clothing Drive. We would love to have some people join us out at City Hall to help take donations and load the trucks. It's also a good time, spend the next couple days and the next weekend maybe cleaning out your garage for blankets, jackets, sweatshirts, towels, plus size clothing, suits you might not be wearing. That's actually, as I was reviewing that video, that's a big thing, having clothes for veterans to be able to go on job interviews is a very big thing. If you don't have anything in your garage, definitely need men's underwear and socks, women's underwear and socks, and women's sports bras. All right, moving along very rapidly here.
Andrew?
Hey,
Andrew?
yes, Jay.
Who's our club's contact person if we want to help out?
I can be a contact point. I think also,
With Doug
Yeah, you can contact me if you'd like. And
there we go. That's Keith. Yeah, I was trying to come up with your name, Keith, and I apologize.
I forget it a lot too, so don't worry.
Yeah. I was looking inside my shirt for a name and your name wasn't there. So yes, either Keith or I. Keith is the main contact at this point, but
How
I
many people
certainly
do you need?
Sorry, Christine.
How many people might you need to be there that morning?
Well, several years ago, we asked people to sign up, but then so many people started to show up that we've stopped taking any kind of sign up or anything. So if you'd like to show up for an hour or two or the morning, you're welcome to. There are quite a few people already committed, so staffing is probably okay, but it's a pretty fun morning anyway. So come out if you'd like anytime.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It really is. Especially when the donuts show up, which I may actually volunteer to bring this time. So
Always a good time with fellow Rotarians.
yes. Christine,
Yeah,
I think you're up for our fun song now.
I believe I am.
And real quick, I want to, 1 second, we have someone joining that I want to say hello to. So real quick before this comes in, our favorite Washingtonian, Mr. Frank Tecca. Hello, how are you?
Yay.
All right. Christine, yes, fun song.
Okay, let's just pretend we have music behind this, Mike. Mike Strong works in Escondido all the livelong day, working hard in Escondido. That's what council members say. Used to work for Encinitas, Vista, and Carlsbad too. Now department head in Esco, a public service servant through and through. poli sci and econ BA, admin and public policy MA, master's planning, master's degree in city planning, still must carry student debt today. Business, did you know? Community, did you know? Planning and development help our city grow. Someone's in the city hall with Michael. Community development, his show. Planning for the future of our city. Mayor Mac, watch this fellow.
Yay.
Great job.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. So at this point, Mike Strong, you can take over control of the screen if you would like. And we're going to have, who's our introducer? I missed that.
I am. Joe.
Okay, please.
Joe Garcia.
Joe Garcia, you go, brother.
Right. I was wondering there for a second, but after that song, there's really no need for an introduction. That was absolutely one of the best ones that I have heard.
Oh, yay.
It was awesome. Mike Strong works on a range of projects that shape how we live in communities and regions of tomorrow. He has a BA in political science and economics from UC Davis, a master's degree in public policy and administration from Sacramento State University, and a master's degree in city planning from San Diego State University. He has 15 plus years of work experience in local government, previously working for the cities of Encinitas, Vista, and Carlsbad. He currently serves as the Director of Community Development for the city of Escondido. The Housing and Community Investment Study identifies the city's housing needs and establishes clear goals and objectives to inform future housing decisions. This important effort will guide Escondido's future housing policy creation and implementation. It will address things like how best to increase or accommodate affordability, substandard housing rehabilitation, existing demand of new housing, eliminating housing development constraints, and fair housing. The Housing and Community Investment Study covers three separate but related topics. Number one, the housing element update. Number two, the sector feasibility study. And number three, the East Valley specific plan. The East Valley specific plan is a comprehensive planning and zoning scheme for an area just east of the former downtown hospital campus. It is an opportunity to create sites ready for residential and mixed use development. Thank you very much and welcome, Mike, to Escondido Rotary.
Thank you, and that was a quite impressive introduction. The warm, welcoming song and Councilmember Garcia, your introduction was very nice indeed. I just want to make sure everyone can see my screen before I speak to this topic. And to put it quite simply, the work program that we're currently sponsoring is to identify where housing should go in the city and where it should look, what it should look like once it's built. That's about as basic of a premise that I can offer. We do have this thing called the Housing Community Investment Study. It's just a unique way to kind of brand that very concept. And it unites three separate studies together under one consolidated program. So I might be referring to East Valley specific plan in this presentation. The larger picture though is we're also updating our housing element, which gives us an opportunity just to look at how we establish goals and policies in the city and make sure that we're right sizing our approach to housing to meet our future needs, to meet existing resident needs, and really to incentivize opportunities to grow. And as cities grow, the question is where? Like, is it growing in smart locations, taking advantage of existing services or infrastructure? Is it meeting the needs that we have? So there is a kind of a social aspect to this. There's a business economic sense to it. And then of course there's an environment sense to it. So this is a very important project for the city. It's not often that cities do this, but as I progress through the next couple of slides, just keep in mind that that's really what we're looking to, the premise is what we're looking to do. How are we going to grow? Where cities, where are we going to plan for new housing? And then what it's going to look like when it's built. So the area of focus is just east of the former downtown hospital campus and east of our downtown. And it really is bounded between to the north and south by the Creek Channel and approximately Grand Avenue to the south. But it goes all the way past the 78, so just past Ash. So the eastern boundary is Harding. What we're looking to do is focus the conversations with the community about how and where and what it looks like for new housing within this area. So this is a very large area of the city. It is, you know, an area that has had a rich tradition of improvements in the past. With the hospital leaving, it makes a perfect opportunity for us to re-envision what is going to be planned for new growth surrounding it. So, and planning efforts are always kind of looking off to the future. So we're trying to develop plans that will be implemented over the next 15, 20 years. So part of the discussion involved a series of land use map alternatives with the community. It was in October of this last year that the city sponsored a workshop virtually to engage with the community, talk about where new housing should go, the right mix between different types of uses. So housing may be the primary reason to go through this effort, but certainly the balance of other uses needs to be contemplated. You know, what type of commercial uses are allowed, access to parks, other types of city services. So some of the steps taken to date include us analyzing the existing conditions of the area, housing conditions citywide. We also conducted some surveys. Many of you might have seen these surveys, and if not, I can still show you how to participate and maybe even identify remaining steps in the work program so you can be involved moving forward. But also interrelation between the different kind of feasibility studies. So the sector feasibility study is pretty interesting because the goal was to look at the costs of how to build certain types of housing. So it certainly costs a certain amount to build a new single family home, and it costs a certain amount to build you know, a 2-story or 3-story home. But understanding all the direct and indirect costs that go into that, and then also against multifamily development. And the idea was to look at essentially the profitability. Is it viable under existing regulations to build different housing prototypes? And so that could be carriage houses, it could be stacked flats, it could be garden style apartments, it could be wrapped housing around parking, so structured parking. There's a lot of different ways to accommodate multifamily development. So the sector feasibility study is still in draft form, but the idea was to understand what the costs are, and is it economically viable to put together certain requirements of a developer, or should we be a little bit more flexible to make sure that the sites, once they've been identified, are viable for redevelopment? So on that October 7th workshop, we revisited some of the takeaways from earlier engagement. Some of the broader and, I'm going to say, abridged or overly simplified statements really resulted in conversations around these 6 different topic areas. Leveraging the Escondido Creek, the city recently got a $8 million grant to establish a linear park along the channel. The idea is to turn that into a real amenity. So a lot of individuals and participants in prior engagement has identified a need to be creek oriented towards development, so we can really utilize that as an asset and a backbone to the planning. Another is to create a strong identity for the East Valley area, provide affordable, moderate income housing. So again, accommodating future needs. Promoting walkability through mixed use and complete streets. So activating the street through smart design concepts or through density in the right locations, so people are able to walk to destinations or take bike or take transit to get to different locations. enhancing the streetscapes along building frontages, which is more of a vertical building design issue, and then creating more public open space, including recreation, and in fact, perhaps leveraging the Creek Trail as a linear park. That resulted in a broad, and I'm not going to read this statement to you, but it's a broad visioning statement of kind of the work program. That the goal is to really bring everything together, those 6 visioning statements that I referred to earlier. The idea is to get everyone to agree to a common principle, but obviously how it's carried out and implemented in planning that's where we need additional public input. So again, where does housing go? What does it look like when it's built? So the 3 alternatives that were discussed at the October 7th workshop are represented on this slide: housing, economic, environmental focus. Each has a different mix of housing or allowances for commercial. Some of what we're looking at, and I just want to spend one quick second on this, is some of the residential densities are the multifamily. The urban 4, urban 5 designation, the orange on here is intended to represent up to 30 units per acre. Whereas the mixed use, the purple land use category is intended to go above that, be up to about 80 units per acre. So you'll see, and I'm not going to spend too much time showing you what each individual map is and how uses are organized on the map, but the idea is that each map had a different purpose. And what we heard at that October 7th workshop is that somebody liked a little bit of each map. With all the lived experiences of the participants, the business interests, the interest of growing more housing in the community, being sensitive to the environment, it actually resulted in some direction, at least at a staff level, to take bits and pieces of each of the 3 maps and assemble a new map, a hybrid of the 3. So that hybrid map is what city staff is kind of basing its effort on at this point. And it's culminating into a draft specific plan that will be released at later this month. City staff has docketed an item with the city council to receive the draft specific plan, but more importantly, allow the city council to provide some early guidance to make sure we're heading on the right path. So it is a sounding board or check-in with city council. And then secondarily, we'll be asking city council what type of questions should we be asking the community in the 3rd phase of outreach, which I'll speak to at the end of this presentation. So just to briefly revisit the housing options, or sorry, the map options. There were a list of pros and cons with each one, but you'll notice probably the similarity between all 3 maps. They all produce new opportunities for housing development, more growth opportunities for commercial. So this is really infusing and injecting new opportunities for this area, which is a bit synergistic, right? As people redevelop private redevelopment on their property, it helps encourage others to do the same. But the biggest regulatory incentive that we can offer is to add new bundles of rights to these property owners. So currently, a lot of the commercial areas only allow commercial. Even the residential districts that surround the hospital are zoned for commercial purposes. The idea was the hospital was going to be in place in the downtown for the foreseeable future. And there would need to be some sort of hospital office type of uses supporting it. Those plans have changed. So the city needs to revamp its plans to accommodate that change, but also to promote new and smart growth. So each of these alternatives have new dwelling units, new jobs. Economic had a little bit more of a focus on jobs. So there's a lot more commercial allowances, less housing. And then the environment focus had a little bit more of an emphasis on creating like pocket parks or a park overlay zone that would be applied in different areas of the specific plan. So that helps also accommodate new housing and new jobs, but looks to emphasize open space as part of the development moving forward. So the resulting draft plan, like I said, is going to be a hybrid of all those options. It's going to still emphasize a lot of housing, emphasize commercial growth, and then also inject and infuse kind of some environmental efforts, both in the private spaces through new zoning standards, which are the rules of the city on how properties develop, but also create opportunities for the city to put in public spaces. So the report out to this Rotary Club that I want to provide is now is the perfect time to engage in this process. So for those of you who have not heard about this work program or have not attended any prior outreach events or participated in the surveys, now is a good time to start getting engaged. And the reason being is that we are going to be wrapping this project up in the next 6 months. And in order to do that, we need to identify and finalize where the housing should go. And more importantly, come up with those rules so that we can streamline future development, make it really easy for developers to build and construct new housing, while at the same time, making sure that the expectations are set through very detailed design guidelines or standards so that there is expectations up front before an application is even brought in on the type of housing that's expected, again, to help streamline people through the planning process. So we are going to be presenting the draft plan on later this month on March 24th. And just to restate real briefly, it's an opportunity for us to check in with the city council and make sure we're on the right path, and formally to kick off the third phase of outreach to make sure that we are going to be engaging the community in a meaningful way so that the feedback received can help inform the decision makers on adopting this type of plan. Regarding some of the standards that's being contemplated, there are, like I mentioned, different prototypes that make sense based on different densities or how much housing can go in a certain area. And some of these are graphical representations of what new housing could look like, making sure that, one, you're controlling the size, the bulk and scale of each individual unit, but making sure that certain provisional amenities are provided concurrently with the project, so it's a little more livable. This was the mixed use wrap building that I was referring to earlier. So again, this is a little bit more denser scale, so this would probably be in the higher density designated areas of the specific plan. But the idea is to tuck the parking into the center of the site so it's not visible, and literally the housings take advantage of the structural foundation of that parking structure to support its development. And then I think there's some basic, let's see, here's the townhome concept. So in the smaller lot infill areas of the plan where there might be existing single family homes, one of the efforts is to legitimize that use to no longer call it non-conforming, but to provide the right mix of incentives so that property owner chooses to redevelop their property and adds additional dwelling units onto the property. There's also different prototypes for like triplexes. So again, as the density increases, the shape of the housing will change with it. The other is emphasis on amenities. So taking advantage of maybe open space requirements for new housing development, stormwater requirements, but also taking in consideration opportunities to incentivize the property owner to provide publicly accessible amenities. So pushing the open space into the streetscape area so there's a semi-public connection to it, and then providing some sort of standards on how to accomplish its completion. So I think that's primarily it. I don't have much more to share, I guess, beyond that. I do want to make myself available to answer any questions about the process or kind of the preliminary direction that staff is taking the project. But the idea at this point is really to check in with City Council, and flesh out any key policy issues with the city council, get that direction, and then have that exchange with the community to get that meaningful input to finalize the plan. And the goal is to wrap this up by the summer. So with that, I really appreciated the introduction earlier. That was a great way to kick it off, and I hope I didn't bring the meeting interest down with my discussion of planning related items. But at any rate, I do want to, I cannot overstate the importance of this type of project because it is intended to set direction for the next 20 years. So how that area of the city grows will be determined by public input and established by council direction and adopting the plan. So now's the time to be engaged. So with that, I'll turn it over and I'll stay unmuted in case I need to answer any questions. Thank you.
Mike, Laura Stees has asked, how do people get involved in the outreach project?
There are a couple ways, and now that I'm seeing the chat board too, there might be things on there, but that's a great question. We do have a project website available that serves as a resource, and I might send this to Dara to circulate out to the membership, but the idea is to have everything that we work on posted online on this webpage. So it serves as like a library of information per se. We also are providing notices. There's two ways to receive notices. One, you can email me and I'll add you to an email listserv. So anytime I send out an email about the project, you'll receive an update. The other is on the planning department webpage, there is an opportunity to sign up for automatic notifications of any city notices. So beyond just this project, anything that the planning commission considers, any other project that the city's working on, you can actually receive and subscribe to something called Constant Contact, and we will send the information to you directly. So there's two ways someone can do it, and I'll follow up with Dara with instructions on doing both after this meeting.
Okay, Colleen McKinnon asks, is the Sandag remaining housing allocation by AMI being integrated into the East Valley Plan?
Yes, and that is the primary, I'll say, genesis of infusing housing into this area. On one hand, it just makes sense. Our 2012 general plan targeted this area for potential growth and has already established policy for that. But this project is specifically devoted to accommodating that future housing need. So that the numbers that were established through the Department of Finance and passed to the Sandag Board of Directors that adopted a regional housing needs plan to assign new housing, new growth to each city. Those numbers that the city received that are above what our ability is and our existing sites inventory to accommodate is going to be fully accommodated by this plan area. So I see a shared screen with the planning department webpage. If you scroll down, probably to the center of the screen, there's a lot of
yes. Hang on one sec. I'm running. Okay, scroll down.
There's a lot of introductory information about, business recovery and how to conduct yourself entering City Hall. But here, public notices. So there's an opportunity to see prior notices in that Planning Commission link and the Zoning Mystery link. But where you have your cursor now, the email subscriptions here, that will allow you to sign up for that planning division wide, everything in community development where we send out notices. You'll receive that there. And then in the alternative, you can email me directly and I'll add you to something that would be similar just for this project.
And that would be this right here?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, that goes directly to me. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What other questions do we have, folks? Let's see, Jay Grossman. I'm sorry, Dara, I'll come back to you second.
This is land that's owned by the city, right? We're not going to run into anything like Mike Schlesinger and then that debacle.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the country club. I was the project planner that worked on that. Was actually assigned the project the first week on the job here in Escondido.
I'm looking at my
and
back.
you stuck around.
Yeah, I stuck around. Yeah, so I've been here about 4.5 years. But yeah, that was my project, first big project I worked on here. So yeah, so in this instance, there are private property owners, and what they do with their property is a little bit of their choosing, but there is some mix of public interest and oversight and control over if someone does redevelop their property, how they redevelop. And so that's where this plan will essentially come in. And the idea primarily is to not take away the nature of existing private property owner rights. So if someone wants to keep doing what they're doing, they can. But what we're trying to do is create essentially an opportunity cost, increase what in the real estate industry calls a bundle of rights, so that you can do more with your property, which increases property value. But the idea is to really encourage and incentivize people to take advantage of those new rights. But yeah, we'd all like to avoid any bad neighborly conduct between property owners, as you referenced with the Schlesinger the Villages project. So the idea actually is to really look at the existing utility of this area and provide the incentives so underutilized properties can redevelop and then be higher performing, and not in the sense that it looks nicer or it does more for the property owner, but really for the identity of that whole planning area, the East Valley area. The idea is to identify what the character is that we want to see, and then put in the policies to encourage people to build to meet those or attain those visions that the community embraces through community support solutions.
Tara, you had a question.
I did, and Mike, you sort of answered it, but I guess I was just hoping, can you elaborate a bit more on how you promote and what that sort of looks like or is defined in terms of a cultural identity of that community? Is it like, we want to create the equivalent of San Diego's Little Italy, or, how does that get formulated in terms of agreeing to certain development or not?
That's an excellent question. And really that gets down to basic planning 101. So it's a very fundamental question into how we plan for communities. So through site design, where building parking is located will shape, how spaces look. So if you think a very auto-centric area, the urban form of where parking is located, large commercial areas, that clearly is different than, like you said, Little Italy, where you might park in one location and walk half a mile, but you do that because you want to, because of the experience of what you have. So clearly in this type of setting, especially in commercial areas, the site design parameters help establish how people use the space. And then there's building design, right? So looking at what the buildings look like. And so you go to Santa Barbara, you have a lot of white Spanish style buildings, very clear identity for that area. You go to Little Italy, it's very eclectic, but it has like a more contemporary type of charm to it. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but it really fundamentally gets down to design, which I kind of just spoke to. Diversity, so making sure there's a mix of different things, people, commercial goods, services, all in the same area. So there's activated of streetscape. And all that interrelation together is really what helps define that character that you were asking. So the zoning standards and design guidelines are probably just as important as the density conversation, because it does take design density and diversity really to unlock those visions that you create for it. So yeah, every area, every zoning district has a different character. Like rural areas, clearly low scale, low rural feel, the livestock, animals, a lot of green spaces. Urban centers, completely different. And so the idea is to figure out what type of uses we want to locate. And again, back to the premise, where do you want to locate new housing and what do you want it to look like when it's developed?
Hey, this is Roy Henderson. I've got a question for you, Mike. Hey, I know you use a lot of mixed use units of development on your maps you showed. There's been discussion of getting rid of this requirement in mixed use to have retail on the first floor, because my observation around town, all these mixed-use developments the last 15 years, that retail space on the first floor has been a total failure. You've got spaces that have not been empty for years. So a few years ago, I tried to get a real estate broker that represent trying to lease that space to come in and talk about why it doesn't rent, or at best, third-rate businesses go in there. And nobody wanted to talk about it. Couldn't get anybody to come in. And so my question is there discussion, you calling it mixed use, but get rid of that retail requirement?
Yeah, no, that's a very, I guess, astute question, and probably acknowledging that the issue that you noticed several years ago has just been exacerbated by this pandemic and, you know, the commercial mortgage mess that might be following. So council already authorized a reevaluation of the ground floor requirement in the downtown area. So we're talking about the East Valley specific plan in this presentation, but back to the downtown, to unlock that constraint to housing development. Some areas you do want to preserve some activation of the street with goods and commercial services, but you know, a district-wide policy is very restrictive. So the downtown area is already in process. With this particular area, like I mentioned, there were different emphases placed on those different maps. The idea is to really focus in on the areas where mixed use with ground floor commercial should be preserved versus having a little bit more of a flexible approach elsewhere. But that would be a perfect area and the type of feedback that we need in this last phase of outreach to make sure that we're flexible enough in the right areas so that it makes sense. But like I said earlier, it is a 20-year plan, so we need to make sure that how things develop at the end of it achieves whatever vision that we're trying to create. But ground floor compulsory requirements are a constraint, and in a lot of ways it doesn't make sense.
Let's see, Fred Baranowski wants to know, how will you activate the Escondido Creek area?
The current thinking, at least in the draft plan that's being created, is to do one of two things. One, the creek area and the linear park improvements are all public investments funded through that Prop 68 grant that I referred to earlier. So the idea is that's going to go through a tremendous enhancement. And usually when you look to revitalize areas, it does take a nice balance of public and private reinvestment. If you track every emerging downtown, for example, Carlsbad, Encinitas, Solana Beach, Vista Way and Vista, there was a public investment infrastructure put in place first, and then with the right policies, and encouraged the private development to kind of take advantage of that. And it really created a good momentum for private reinvestment. So we're looking to do the same with the creek channel to encourage creek orientation, so that buildings that are adjacent to the creek start opening up to the creek instead of walling off or fencing off their development to that. So part of the opportunity that we have with this effort is, since we are unlocking a tremendous, I'll call it a windfall for property owners, but it is back to that bundle of rights increasing property value. The idea is to potentially look at adjacent standards to the creek and require some of the open space of new development be located in that area, or encourage it and provide some sort of trade-off that if the property owner creates semi-public space adjacent to the creek and opens it up, that maybe they get additional floor area or density or more parking or parking reductions. So again, having the right tool set to mix balance between encouragement and enforcing. But the idea is to have properties adjacent to the creek open up to it and really embrace that as an asset. And that will create a domino effect of more people using the space and creating a more safe environment.
So again, I don't know if you're tracking chat. So Ron Smith had stated and asked, solid presentation, thanks. Downtown seems to end at the old hospital. This area, East Valley, seems to begin there. What are thoughts about any theme continuity, or at least ideas relative to artful transition from an area to the next?
Yeah, that's a great comment. And I guess the abatement or the closure of the downtown campus and potential development of that under the Palermo Heights project does beg the question: how do we transition from a rich urban downtown environment to a more transitional area to the East Valley? And part of the idea is both with scale and mass. So some of the downtown areas allow up to 100 units per acre. Some other areas are 75. The idea is to eventually transition in scale and mass so that properties, when they develop, are embracing that transition. So one, the color and the districts on the map, help identify the density, the amount of housing where it could go. And you'd obviously want to have some sort of sector or gradual decrease in scale away from the downtown or into the residential districts around it. But then also, design control, making sure that the projects that are envisioned in the future respond to that character. So, having a single story next to a 5-story, that would look kind of strange. But if you're encouraging a mix of 2 and 3 stories next to a 4-story, then you start stepping down that scale and mass and creating that opportunity. So the transition between downtown and East Valley is not as abrupt. But how things look, what type of style of architecture, those are all things that I think the community needs to weigh in on and help define. So this is the opportunity to define what that transition should look like, and like I said, more importantly, identify that character for the area. I've been here, I've grew up in North County, San Diego. I know Escondido well, but I haven't lived here, and I don't have the lived experiences that everyone else on this call does or others in the community. And so when we go out for public input, to make it meaningful, we need to hear from these people that know their community, know what would work and what wouldn't, and provide that opportunity to really define the direction of this plan. So when I say we need input, I genuinely mean it.
Beautiful. Do we have any other questions from Mike? Yes, Dara, go ahead.
Mine's kind of a two-parter, and it's about intentionality. That's a pretty diverse area, and I'm wondering what the city is going to do to ensure that they get good engagement from the various community groups and ethnic populations that are there, or ethnicities that are there. And then my second part, which is sort of related, is there any intentionality around funding partners, grant makers for placemaking, having them sort of participate, or funders for community building or revitalization, environmental focused funders, that kind of thing?
I'll start with the second part of your question first. So this project is fully funded through a state grant. There was a SB2 grant that was awarded to the city in beginning of 2020. So it kind of started off with the premise of a funding partner. So clearly it has some defined parameters. We need to accommodate new housing. Exactly where that's located and how much is up to the community. But yeah, I guess part of the development of standards is to help establish what to expect when things are built. But in terms of the city partnering with individual partners to build housing, that would probably only come in the form of like home or CDBG or some other funding source that the city has to provide seed money for those types of endeavors. But other than that, the city doesn't proactively, I guess, engage in that type of process, because ultimately the city has to approve the project for design. And usually it's kind of prejudicing the process if we're designing the project and then ask ourselves to approve it. Back to the first question, inclusivity. One thing that I've had in my wheelhouse from a professional experience standpoint has been public outreach. With this pandemic, everything kind of got flipped upside down, and it's intended to for us to have meetings virtually, but, I'll be the first to acknowledge that the people that are able to attend virtual meetings are the ones that have the technology, the ability to get on, to use it. But more importantly, that have the time to do that. Having workshops, at the end of the business day when, someone's been socially distanced or remote distance learning with their kids and working on their own, the last thing they have time for is, civic engagement. So one, we need to create better project awareness with this last phase of outreach. We have done direct mailers to every property owner in this specific plan area. We need to do it again or find another way to get word out that at least we're doing something. So that's one measure of success for engagement. The other is, well, once you get their attention, how are you going to engage them in a meaningful process so they can provide input? And so we've primarily been relying on, instead of funding partners to build housing, partners such as the Rotary Club, conduits to other memberships, larger groups to help get the word out. So it's something that we're going to have to be very mindful of in this next step, because it is a very diverse area of the city, and as it develops, it will continue to be diverse. And so we need to make sure that what we put in the plan makes sense to accomplish all that. So that is a challenge, and it's an ongoing issue for every city project, not only just for the city, but everywhere. But yeah, we're open to ideas and we're open to suggestions on how to reach out. But we're looking to get the word out as well as we can.
So, and that kind of, I don't speak the planning language like you do, so maybe this is what you were just saying. But it does raise a question to me. How do you prevent gentrification and forcing low-income people out of and forcing them into more and more compressed areas?
Well, because the East Valley specific plan is intended to unlock housing, the idea, I guess the question would be, should it all be market rate, or do you want to provide some incentives to encourage what we call affordable or inclusionary housing, or something that would be rented out or sold to a lower income household? And so that can come in a mix of either a carrot or a stick approach. I mentioned earlier the incentives that could be offered for property owners to do creekside oriented development. The same could be made for providing inclusionary housing. Secondarily to that, you could also provide a requirement that a certain percentage of new housing needs to be inclusionary. Or if we created some unique programs like transferring density from one site to the other, that maybe the base density is market rate, but anything that's transferred, a percentage of that is affordable. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, and a lot of different ways to incentivize it. One unique thing that we are already pursuing, so these are the types of things that we'll ask City Council for direction on the 24th. But one unique thing that we've already included in the draft specific plan that will be released later this month is something called a target production point for new housing. So if your density allows 30 units per acre and you don't build 30 units per acre, at some point that there needs to be a cutoff. We're saying, well, you need to at least build this amount of housing because the state has a whole bunch of requirements, which I won't get into. They have something called no net loss housing, which means if sites under development, the cities get dinged for it, essentially. But the idea is to establish some sort of production point, and if the developer chooses not to reach that level, so back to the 30 units per acre example, if someone doesn't build at 24 dwelling units per acre or 20 units per acre, the idea is that the developer can pay an in lieu fee to the city for some predetermined amount that the city council adopts. And then that money goes into like an affordable housing fund that the city could then partner with other nonprofit developers to actually build more housing in the area. So that's kind of a creative approach that we've already included just to provoke thought and discussion. But the full circle of all the opportunities is something that we want to get some engagement with the city council on, so that city council can give us direction on what types of questions we should be asking in the future workshops or engagement opportunities. So if we need to test inclusionary housing, we can ask the right questions and then report back to city council and get direction on how to move forward with it.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. It was not at all dry. It was not at all boring. This was a fascinating program, and thank you for your expertise and for joining us today.
I appreciate the time, and thanks again for the great introductions.
Oh, that's what we're known for. We are known for making people feel welcome, I guess, is one way to put it. So thank you. It was really brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm going to close this meeting officially, and people can hang out if they want after they're done. So let's do our shower thought of the week. Let's see. Come on. There we go. The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. And that was said by Pablo Picasso. So we'll end this meeting today with that thought. And you all have a great week. We will see you next week. And I hope you have an amazing weekend.